All right, if you're having trouble keeping your back straight during deadlifts and squats, I'm going to teach you how to do that. So first and foremost, we don't actually want our back to be straight. We want it to be neutral. To get an idea of what that looks like, just stand up straight, notice how your spine curves, and assume that's what it's going to look like when you are hinged forward. A lot of people actually overextend their spine, and not only does this make the lift harder than it should be, it does not decrease your injury risk at all whatsoever. So the first step is we need to learn to hinge at the hips. Most people that have lumbar rounding are not hinging at their hips, rather they're bending their back to reach down to something. To hinge at the hips, think pushing your hips back. Once you can hinge at the hips without your spinal position changing, you can move on to the next step. Now for squats, you want to retract and depress your scapula and try to maintain that tightness. This is going to maintain that upper back position. A lot of people wedge themselves under the bar with a really narrow grip. That's giving you a false sense of tightness. You want to make sure you can maintain that positioning and tightness no matter where you grip the bar. Now for deadlifts, you're going to do something different. You're going to do what's called packing the lats. This is one of those things that clicks when you understand it, but until then, you're going to have to try out a bunch of different cues to find out what works. What worked for me is saying I'm doing the opposite of a shrug. This is going to lock in that upper back tightness. Now the next step is to learn to brace effectively. You don't need a belt, but using a belt teaches you how to brace very easily. You try to push out into that belt 360 degrees. And bracing while hinging at the hip is going to maintain that spinal position in the lumbar area, while what we previously talked about is going to maintain the positioning in the thoracic area. One thing that can help that might sound counterintuitive is to make sure you're not looking up. Basically, that kind of just pulls on the musculature so that you kind of give a little bit more rounding in your back to make it easier to look up. And that's honestly all there is to it. Most likely, if you're having trouble maintaining a neutral spine, it's probably because you just haven't learned to hinge at the hip correctly, or you're doing one of those things incorrectly that I mentioned when it comes to upper back tightness. Now, it's important to mention, rounded backs are not inherently injurious. There's a perpetuated myth from over 3 decades ago that comes from basically bad pig cadaver studies where they torqued pig spines into positions that just anatomically are not even possible to get to for humans. So we've known for a while that improper load management is actually what causes injuries to the back, not back rounding, as long as you're not, going from a straight spine to a complete cat back without any tightness and just jerking on a weight. Simply doing a rounded back deadlift is not going to hurt your back necessarily. However, it does make it a bit more inefficient depending on how much rounding there is. And when you think of rounding in the back, you want to give some leeway. For instance, you're not going to have a perfectly neutral spine on a max lift. It's just not possible to maintain that. But also, you have to keep in mind, you have a lot of vertebrae. If you're spreading that angle, that degree across multiple vertebrae, each individual vertebrae is only getting not even a single degree of flexion. So some rounding isn't even bad in the lumbar spine, and thoracic rounding can actually be used purposely if you know what you're doing to increase speed off the floor on deadlifts. So while not rounding your back can make your lift more efficient depending on the person, it's not something you need to stress over. Don't let it prevent you from training a lift or trying to progress a lift.